Good morning, all. I would like to start by introducing myself. I am the director of the Gnostic Academy S.A.W. And I would like to deliver this talk, let's call it so, on the Demiurge and Gnosis and a clarification. Because I strongly feel that, as the title states, we need to clarify. I have heard many people now that have come to talk to me that have either heard online, on YouTube, in public live talks, books, authors, or writers, in inverted commas, a lot of information basically regarding the Demiurge, which is truly false, deviated information, not correct. The term Demiurge is a Platonic term, but Gnostic first of all, which was then developed also in Greek, Gnosis by Plato. And as we are practicing Gnostics, I feel the need to clarify this term and the concept of Demiurge, together with many other themes that they mix together, such as Anunnaki, Nibiru, nasty aliens, and a lot of other disinformation that is around that creates a lot of confusion. And it is a true shame for many of these subjects. And there is also the fact that, like myself, many of my colleagues, we take care of the Gnostic schools in all of the 5 continents around the world. We feel that it is correct that a person who is curious or approaches or wants to know what Gnosis is, and he or she comes to a Gnostic school, and the first thing they find is this false, incorrect information, this does not give a true idea of what universal Gnosticism is. Okay, so this is the main reason why I'm delivering this talk, which actually we can say it's the first time that we do anything like this, because we mainly treat topics like the inner work. We work with groups, so if on our YouTube channel there are talks, it's because they are usually public talks that we do every year to present the course that we offer. And once a year we open the course for anyone new who is interested. And so in that case, yes, we normally deliver a talk at the center of the city where we present our course. So that talk then does get recorded and we upload it on YouTube. But that's all that there is. I have never sat down in front of a camera to deliver a talk, because these really are not our ways, such as proselytism. We're not here to spread the word or get a reputation. So we're not here to expand as such. So the reason is almost forced by people that come to the school, or existing students that ask questions, or they speak to us about authors, writers, speakers, about things that really have nothing to do with the reality of the Demiurge, or the eternal Gnostic teaching that has always existed. Okay, since introductions are over, I'm going to begin with Plato, who I think is a great reference, and is well beyond those who call themselves scholars and speak about such subjects. So we find in Plato, and I'm going to read a few texts from Plato, the Demiurge is a divine being who holds creative capacity, as described by Plato in Timaeus, and also in the 10th book of the Republic. The Greek term demiurgos means public worker, made up by demios, the people, the public, and ergon, which means work. So it means a work for the public, a piece of work for humanity, a service, help, collaboration. So this is very different from the idea of dominator of the people, exploiter of humanities, that there is a God that holds us slaves, imprisoned within matter, within this planet. And I will go into this a little bit further. It is all very much the opposite, even just the Greek meaning of the word demiurge, demiurgos, indicates this. He who works for the public, worker for others, disinterested, for love, for compassion, for service, which is what the gods do, and masters. Okay, this is another way which demiurge is defined by Plato. Creator and father of the universe. The demiurge refers to the maximum master, the supreme artisan. So, as you can see, this is very different to a mean god or anything like it, without whom it is impossible for anything to be born. He gives the breath of life. Its matter is shapeless and ungenerated, and it pre-exists himself. The demiurge is the conscious, ordinating and moulding force which brings matter to life, giving it shape and order, and especially an anima mundi, Latin for soul of the world. This divine artisan is therefore the mediator between the intelligible dimension and matter. So, as you can see here, all the terms defining the demiurge are wonderful. He's describing a creator god, a builder god, who guides, a god that transmits life, soul, and it doesn't only create and maintain creation, but it also seeks that those souls awaken, that those souls become self-aware, that all of those souls fuse together with their own demiurge. They become one with the demiurge as a conscious being, a conscious individual God within each one of us. The Gnostic demiurge is therefore the great collective of gods and goddesses that maintain, so they build, maintain, and finally reabsorb at the end of a cosmic period a certain creation of a solar system. Then, okay, in Gnosis we find the concept of a true God, of a good God. However, this does not mean that the demiurge is an evil God. What it does mean in Gnosticism is that there is a state before creation, before any solar system, which is called the absolute abstract space. And this is what we refer to as the true God, or primitive God. By God, we do not mean an anthropomorphic God, but the union of all beings. Each one of us is not just this temporal personality, but we have a divine being. And that union of my being, of your being, of all beings fused into one, that is the absolute. From this absolute, some beings unfold who have already perfected themselves and have an elevated level of consciousness, that have several Philosopher's Stone, several levels of consciousness that have developed a maximum level, and they exit that union to sacrifice themselves and serve humanity, a service to humanity, Demiurgos, and create a solar system where other beings will then inhabit, who do not have the same level of perfection. And this is so that creation will allow them to get to know themselves and perfect themselves, to try and reach, for example, those cosmo-creators that demiurge. So the fact that eternal Gnosis talks about this duality, this double nature, so a true God, and if we like, a secondary God, it does not mean that the second one is evil. It just means that there is a primitive state, a state where everything is united, but it is thanks to the Demiurge who allows the creation of other worlds where all those other beings can reach self-realization. So this is a first clarification on the concept of a superior or inferior God, a good God, and the Demiurge. Good God or secondary God. This means that if each one of us puts into practice the principle of eternal Gnosis, but in practice because Gnosis is not an idea and intellectualism, but practice those teachings that allow you to reach your own being, if Gnosticism is put into practice, he or she can be part of the Demiurge. So you can reach a state of union with the Creator Logos, or even go above by reaching a higher level of consciousness where you go beyond the Logos and become a conscious part of the Absolute. So when you hear talking of a superior or a secondary God, the only thing that differentiates them are the different level of consciousness, but they're still extremely high level because they are the most conscious beings that exist within creation. And that's all. It indicates higher levels of consciousness which each one of us can access. One can become part of a demiurge, and that is a very high level. They are the most elevated beings of a solar system, or can go beyond and become a conscious part of the Absolute. However, also here, there is nothing that is a superior or inferior, good or bad, but only highly elevated beings, and each one of us can be a part of that. And this, in reality, is the aim, the objective of Gnosis. Therefore, to consider them negative is absurd. And in fact, these gods must be adored, worshipped, but not in a fanatical way, but as a form of asking help, because it is correct and necessary that it should be so. It is right to do so because the creator gods were people like ourselves. All of us have fallen. But in those cases, we're talking about souls, people that have walked an inner path, an initiatic path, and they have fused together with their being to such a level that allows them to become a planetary logos, a creator of the worlds, a cosmo-creator. So a demiurge. And that's why it's important to acknowledge them, and also necessary, because without the help of these elevated beings and a creation, we would stand no chance alone in truly developing spiritually to reach our being that we are so far away from because we have created so much subconscious. Within us, we have 97.99% of unconsciousness. There is total ignorance. And in this way, we have come so far from our true being that the being himself is not able to bring us back to him. So it needs to cooperate with physical and internal masters. The Sacred White Lodge, all of these governed by the planetary logos and the solar logos, the demiurge. So, as I said at the beginning, all of this allows us to clarify both classical gnosis, because there exists a type of gnosis which we call classical, that was born in times that preceded even Jesus, as a fusion of the esoteric Oriental and Egyptian traditions, and the Greek esoteric tradition, especially Platonic. Hence, I mentioned earlier Plato. So the union of these mysteric cults, and I'm not talking about public religions because true internal teachings are esoteric. Esoteric means internal. It's nothing strange like dark magic or witchcraft. So this union of these esoteric cults is what scholars call the classical gnosis, who was then found and perfected by Jesus, the great master. So this is classical Gnosis, but there is also an eternal Gnosis, which means the mysterious tradition of all times, which basically always teaches the same principles, which are three. The disintegrations of the unconscious to free one's own consciousness. Darkness shouldn't be integrated because it traps consciousness, so it has to be dissolved in order to free the imprisoned consciousness, a bit like Aladdin's lamp. The sexual energy, which is life, must be transmuted. And just as it can create a physical child, it can create internal life. And we must serve in a disinterested manner others, because in the end, just as the Demiurge and the Absolute says, we are one with other beings. All beings unite into one being, and in any other way it would become spiritual egoism. But it has to be a disinterested help, through tolerance, etc., etc. So these are the three main principles of eternal Gnosis. So there is classical Gnosis and contemporary Gnosis, to give it a name, which is also the teaching which we give in our Gnostic schools, and directed by who is the founder of the contemporary Gnosis, the Master Samael Aumveor. So this subject allows us to clarify these three parts of Gnosis. So eternal Gnosis, classical Gnosis, and actual current Gnosis, which is basically a teaching that had been lost. And that's why we use the same Gnosis, but obviously contemporary, because we use a language that is suitable for our times, and not the same language as they used 2,000 years ago or even before, belonging to eternal Gnosis, that of Hermes Trismegistus, the Gnosis of Zoroaster, the Gnosis of Krishna, the Gnosis of Sakyamuni, which has very little to do with current Hinduism, or Buddhism, or Christianism. That which the public religions transmit is very different to what those Gnostic masters taught. Okay, I'm now going to read a text which I'd written a while ago when some students had asked me. The subject of the Demiurge is in fact simple to understand. The Demiurge is the creator logos or the solar logos, the creator of manifestation, a period of time which lasts 7 cosmic rounds and 7 races. A race is the whole population of a planet. I'm not talking about skin color, etc. We are now one race, one only family, and each planet develops 7 rounds, and each round has 7 races. So the Demiurge is a creator logos of a manifestation with 7 rounds and 7 races, dimensions, etc. 7 main dimensions of nature, superior and inferior, and this main cosmo-creator is assisted by 7 helpers, which are basically the 7 archangels of the Christian world, or in the esoteric world, the 7 creative planetary logos, or as I said earlier, cosmo-creators. If it appears as something negative in the ancient Gnostic texts under the name of an evil god, it is just because us Gnostics consider true existence way beyond manifestation. It is not in this world, nor in the superior dimensions of nature, that you will find the true and ultimate conscious happiness. The good God of the classical Gnostics is the absolute God. So if you hear talking about an evil God using this term, or at least I've translated it, so if you hear talking of a good God and an evil God, it's not because he is evil. It's because the Gnostics of all times, and us current, understand, wanted to give out the clear message that manifestation is a school. Creation is a mirror where one can contemplate oneself, where one can see one's own imperfections, and interactions with others allow us to see our own limitations, so discovering our subconsciousness, our ignorance, which traps our consciousness and the parts of the being, those intimate parts. So creation is perfectly fine as a school. It allows me to know myself, So if I work on myself and put into practice those 3 principles that I mentioned earlier, creation is a gift thanks to the Demiurge, because he is creating this school. So if I use it well, I can awaken, I can get to know my limits, I fuse together with my being, and I become one with the gods. I become one with the Demiurge, or even more, I consciously penetrate in happiness of the Absolute. So an evil god is quite the opposite, because with a lot of hard work and sacrifice, they maintain creation. Or do people think all of this is by chance? Only chaos can be born from chaos. If there is order, it's because there is an ordering principle. Order is born from order. Order cannot be born from chaos. These are only paranoias from the intellect. People's intellects creates all sorts of theories to feel in charge of oneself. But that is only freedom within the ego. A freedom whether one's own unconsciousness that manipulates us and makes us do whatever it wants, from life to life, when in reality there is a good God. It's not someone who manipulates you, but quite the opposite. He's a servant of humanity, a Demiurgos, who creates scenarios and worlds to offer the opportunity to those souls who voluntarily want to get to know oneself. And in fact, each one of us comes down from his own will. No one is forced into manifestation. So why did the classical Gnostics call it an evil god? Because they really wanted to highlight, my kingdom is not of this world. And you can still find a little of this in the Gospels. That phrase from Jesus is still there. Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world. So it's not part of this physical world, this energetic world that many are fascinated by. And it falls as short as this one. It's not the astral world, it's not the world of the 6th dimension, it's not the causal world, nor that of the consciousness. And it's not even the world of the spirit, where you find ultimate reality. All of the 7 main dimensions, and there are also others within creation, depending on which traditions, some speak of 12, some 9. Depends what they want to focus on. There are 9 superior dimensions and another 9 inferior. And it's not in these dimensions that our reality lays, nor where you'll find real happiness. And this is the concept that the Gnostics really wanted to focus on, and we still do that today as contemporary Gnostics, that it's not on this world that I need to build. It's not in this world that I will self-realize. Through my job, through money, not even in the spiritual sense, in the sense that I should feel I am something. It's about a complete negation of oneself, of completely disappearing in this false identity, in this apparent existence, which should only serve as a vehicle to fuse together with our own being. So it's a complete detachment from ourselves and creation that allows us to disintegrate what it is that keeps us imprisoned, such as attachments, desires of all kinds, material and spiritual. And so to be a part of other dimensions, to go beyond the manifestation and the school created by the Demiurge, to enter as an inhabitant of the Absolute, to be conscious. That is why they highlight the concept of an evil god, but he is not, as I have explained. We thank him that he provides this school and the tools through a lot of sacrifice, so that we can become free, conscious, awake. Okay, I think the concept of an evil god and a good god is clearer now, so it's not a literal term. Okay, having clarified this in a Gnostic language, this allows me now to clarify many speculations and mix-ups, deviations and strange things that arise due to the misunderstanding of what I have just explained. So due to the lack of a true teaching, of a true knowledge of esotericism, of Gnosticism, of Hermetism, so as to say, a true esoteric teaching. So due to this, some very horrible stories were actually born. And they call them Anunnaki, extraterrestrials, evil ones, and all this kind of stuff. Okay, if we want to talk about the origin in our more modern times, in order to avoid, because of course there's always been deviations. However, to bring things to modern times, I can begin by talking about this translator of the Sumeric texts, Zecharia Sitchin. He no doubt had all of the best intentions. However, he is not a spiritual master. He is not an initiate. An initiate is not somebody that begins to study, or someone who is simply interested in esoteric matters. An initiate is somebody the Kundalini fire has started to rise along his spinal cord. Something that you don't just obtain in 4 days, or simply by practicing yoga or Reiki or any of these pseudo-spiritual disciplines. So we need more serious principles, and to those who are interested, we invite them to listen to our conferences on YouTube that are public for any who want to get to know the real hermetic, eternal, esoteric tradition. And we invite them to our Gnostic school without having to make a commitment. They can simply listen, and if they like it, good. And if they don't, they can choose whether they want to continue to deepen these studies or not. So, in the translations of these texts, the problem is the interpretation that this man has of those teachings. It's his own interpretation that there are evil gods, as I have said, this concept of Demiurge as an evil god, which appears in the Gnostic Gospels, but I have clarified what was meant by that. However, this translator, this researcher, without having the esoteric hermetic tradition as his background, without having a knowledge of Hermetism, and especially not a practice of conscious awakening, so he has interpreted in his own way these texts. And his interpretation was that there are evil gods, and therefore entities that have created us like robots, machines, in order to be trapped, in order to produce, to serve them, that we are exploited, and all of these stories. Well, all of this really picks at a very simple message that wants to be transmitted, and it is a very simple error that we keep repeating over and over through humanity. First, it was the devil of the Catholics, evangelists, Protestants, and all these Christian or pseudo-Christian sects. So we always feel the need to blame someone. So the devil is to blame with horns and a trident, something that doesn't exist. And he is evil incarnate, and he is to blame for everything. And all the problems of humanity are because of him, with a tail and horns. Now the story has changed, since not many people follow religions anymore. So we make something else up. But we're still saying that the problem is outside of us. We say the evil ones are outsiders or aliens. So humanity is from other planets that have come, manipulated DNA, created us, constructed us however they've wanted to. And so we are but exploited machines. We serve them like miners working in this world, or others at their service. They suck up all our energies, etc., etc. But the point is always the same. The problem is outside. A devil, evil ones, evil aliens. So someone evil. And that we are nothing but exploited. So if that were the case, we wouldn't have a solution. So what would the solution be? Star Wars? The solution is that you are then a slave, a robot. You're not free to think for yourself. So you cannot free yourself. So the message of the great masters must be false. Because the great masters do not say, follow me and you will become a conscious person. The real message of all real great masters is to put this into practice and you will become a free being. So from a starting point where there are these evil ones that keep us trapped, then there is no possibility of freedom, of liberation, of self-consciousness. And so, according to them, what is also false is that in all times there are essences, men, women, that by walking a true esoteric initiatic path, that's spiritual and real, they free themselves. But what do they free themselves from? Certainly not from Anunnaki or strange gods such as reptiles, reptilians. This is not what we need to free ourselves from. We need to free ourselves from ourselves. Because the problem, as I was saying, is that by blaming someone, you misplace the solution. The problem is not outside. It's neither the devil, nor Anunnaki, nor evil aliens. None of these exist. And I will say a little bit more about this later. These are only symbols of our subconscious, which is a problem of psychology. But psychology means soul, while subconscious means that which keeps the soul imprisoned. And in Gnosticism, we call this the ego, individualism, subconsciousness, a load of personal interests, selfishness, anger, lust, envy, pride, traumas, attachments, desires of all kinds that we are dependent from, enslaved by. And these psychological elements or mental crystallized substance, such as sexual energy that has been misdirected, this imprisons our consciousness. It traps the divine parts inside of us. So this is what we need to get to know through disciplines and not only meditation. So through many disciplines, we need to get to discover this, pinpoint it, comprehend it, and resolve it with the help of the internal divine parts inside of us, together with the help of a work with the sexual energy, either as a single person or as a couple. And I am not talking about the deviated tantra of our times, and service to humanity, which also has some characteristics, because it's not only about doing good or the Red Cross. So these are three eternal principles that are arts. They have laws. They're a principle we need to be aware of in order to do things consciously. But if we move the problem outside, we will never have the solution, and especially we drift away from a solution that actually exists. The devil, Anunnakis, evil aliens, they're just symbolic entities, wrong interpretation of texts that used to be sacred, but without having the knowledge were interpreted wrongly. And all those texts are talking about really is entities that exist inside ourselves, because they truly have those forms, monsters, reptiles, evil demons, devils, etc. So all of this we find inside ourselves, our psyche. 99% of the human psyche is possessed, eclipsed, full of ignorance, unconsciousness. And that's why in Gnosis we say that before sin there is ignorance. That's what Gnostics used to say. So I have to resolve my own ignorance, because I don't know who I am, that I am a being, what it is that separates me from that being. All of these eyes. And hidden within ignorance, I do find Gnosis, which is not a simple school or a teaching, but it means to be awake, to be one with one's own being. And then my own being, through experience, morphed stones, etc., can be a Demiurge, a creator logos, or I can become a solar logos. I can fuse together with all the beings within the Absolute. Okay, so these evil ones do not exist. What does exist are people like each one of us that develop and reach their own being, their own God. And so now they help others to awaken, or people like ourselves that distance themselves from their being and they continue to feed their own egoism, their own individualism, that think exclusively about themselves and their own loved ones, and they are indifferent towards others, or they even try to exploit them, or they compete against them. So they distance themselves from the beings, they become dark, so they embottle their own consciousness always more, and that egoic nature of the subconsciousness keeps getting stronger. And these become people that serve evil. Their own ego, they feed it. So this lives, it grows, and they become more and more dangerous against themselves, their own being, and others. So, do dark ones exist? Evil souls? Well, yes, we are all the same, but it depends on what we develop within ourselves. We can choose to develop the consciousness and unite with the being, or we can develop the subconscious more and more and become vehicles of evil. Just as in goodness, there are levels of consciousness, and I can be good or I can be conscious, the same applies to evil. I can be evil and not be aware of it. The floors of hell are paved with good intentions, as we say. Or we can intentionally develop evil more and more, because I consider that feeling superior and dominating other is a correct and principle. That God, as he has been misinterpreted, is a God that exploits others. And so, if I become powerful and manipulator, I can exploit others, then I am close to God. Do you understand how delicate this subject is? And it's not just a simple talk. So then, are there dark masters? Yes. Are there dark souls? Yes. We have fallen angels, and all traditions talk about this. But can these fallen angels trap the entire humanity within a planet? So going back to the Anunnaki, no. Dark masters, dark angels, they do the devil's work. World plots, pandemic plots, and many other plots. So they keep trying in order to keep humanity asleep through vices, through drugs, through alcohol, prostitution, pornography, with many things. Of course, they try and carry out these plots. But the choice is always up to us, whether to walk a path towards one's own being or to live imprisoned within matter. And no one can condition us on that, because it is an individual choice. Because just as there are these characters which carry out plots, there are the White Masters, the White Lodge, millions of beings that try and help us in the opposite direction, or that want to show us the way of the light, the way of the being, that want to teach us the mysteries of all times, in all times. And all of these are what we call the great masters of the White Lodge, the masters that we know, and everybody may appreciate one more than the other. You know, Krishna, Hermes, Buddha, Quetzalcoatl, Huiracocha, etc., etc. But all of these are directed by the Demiurge. The opposite of evil, then, the Logos, the seven archangels, Gabriel, Raphael, Michael, Zachariel, Samael, and Orifiel. These are the seven main archangels, together with the solar Logos, the venerable Master Aberamento. All of the masters, those known, unknown, mortal, immortal, ascended, however we want to call these, all guided by the seven Logos and the solar Logos. And these eight together are the Demiurge. So there are certain characters which do the devil's work in order to trick us, and then there are the White Masters which try and help us in this battle. Because this is what the school of manifestation is. There is light, there is darkness, there is day, there is night. There is summer, there is winter. It's up to us how we want to live. But from this, to consider that all creators or creation is a program in order to keep us without hope and exploited, no, it is not at all like this. This is but a deviation, a wrong interpretation of the sacred texts. all due to a lack of esoteric knowledge and the lack of initiation or true conscious spiritual awakening. Okay, so the last subject that I wanted to talk on is that about evil aliens. Do aliens exist? Of course. In fact, I'll tell you more. All of us are aliens in the sense that the Earth hasn't always existed, and it won't exist forever. Planets are born and they die. That is what the Demiurge does. He creates worlds that are needed for a while and then they die. They were useful for an experiment, not a manipulative experience, but an opportunity that some take and others will take in another Mahanmantara, how it is called in the Oriental language, which are basically other cosmic days, other cosmic periods. Everything has a beginning and an end, and then a new solar system is born, another galaxy, and this is eternal. Time is eternal. However, even eternity tires. So eternal, it's not like I just go to sleep and that's it, because the soul gets tired, or it can remain completely hypnotized by matter. So this doesn't mean that I can take my time because time is infinite. Because if I do not use time for a process of elevation, then I fall into entropy, which is something that's been demonstrated. And we're not talking about Darwinian evolution, which is another paranoia of Anunnaki, so as to say, of hidden dark interests. All the materialism, Darwinism, the Big Bang are all unfounded scientific theories. And the only expectation is to see that you are matter, that there is no beginning and no end to you. So yes, these are some of the examples of plots that dark souls create, with dark intentions in order to keep humanity without hope for development. Therefore, mechanical evolution does not exist. However, something that was physically demonstrated is entropy, which means that everything is pulled downwards just as gravity shows. So we shouldn't fall into this, that because I have so much time, I can take it easy. No, because of what exists. So if I do not exercise conscious efforts in order to overcome a law that attracts us downwards, then I stay downwards at the point where I can no longer get up, at which point I would then need to be reabsorbed by the Absolute, the Demiurge, but I remain an undeveloped consciousness, like a germ that's not developed. So I'm happy, world of the Absolute, but without consciousness, and happiness without consciousness of that happiness. So that's what I was saying, that we are all aliens because the worlds are not forever. Now we are on planet Earth, but we may have lived in other worlds, or we certainly will be in the future. So nobody belongs to planet X. Our origin is in the Absolute, so that's beyond all of spiritual dimensions within the stars. Okay, so to come back to the common understanding of an alien, which is intended as a humanity from another planet, do they exist? Yes, of course. To think that the only intelligent life is the Homo erectus or the Homo sapiens or, the human is not intelligence. Would you call intelligence something that self-destroys, that destroys the planet? Pseudo-technology that finishes all the resources. This is not intelligent. So intelligent life currently does not exist on planet Earth. And if it does exist, it's within nature, in plants, in certain animals, but certainly not in the human kingdom. So does intelligent life exist in other planets? Of course. It would be a great waste for the Demiurge, or the gods, as plural, to create so much life, and then as though there is only one tiny grain of sand of life in a massive sea. So of course there is intelligent life, and there are plenty of testimonies of this. of humanities in many other planets, galaxies, universes, etc., etc. Okay, so now we say, oh, well, if they exist, they must be evil, just as there are good people or bad people. So, of course, bad people do not just exist on planet Earth, because the universe is so vast, and this is what makes it beautiful. So, there is not just planet Earth, there are many other planets that have souls that unfortunately haven't understood and therefore develop in the subconscious, in egoism, in individualism, in submission, in wanting to have power over others. But what also exists beyond the planet Earth are masters of the White Lodge, so people like ourselves that have fused together with their being, and they have developed their own consciousness. Okay, so people tell themselves, oh, these are the Anunnaki, these evil aliens that have come here at a remote time and created this manipulation. They have created us genetically, etc., etc. No, because a small but very important esoteric detail is missing here. As creation is governed by gods, this means that there are laws. One can't just do whatever he wants. So if you are on a planet, but you're not fused together with your being, you cannot leave that planet, because you are not a free being. You cannot physically leave that planet when you are attached to it. Your psyche, your soul, your subconscious is part of the infra-dimensions of that planet. You are an inhabitant of Dante's circles. The I lives in the infra-dimensions. So until you free yourself from the infra-dimensions, you are not free from that planet in order to move. So you might think, oh, but we have been on the moon. But the moon is not another planet. The moon is a satellite. The moon and planet Earth have got a direct relationship, like a mother and a son. We haven't exited our system. Earth-Moon is one space. What about Mars? I don't believe we will ever get there, but that's another matter, and it would be another subject to explain why the human being would never reach Mars. I'm already explaining the main reason, because there are laws in order to maintain an order with freedom. So I create a world, a school that you need, but you cannot destroy it. You can't kill someone or hit the teachers or the head teacher. So I give you everything, but there are laws to be respected. That's why gods exist, the Elohim, the planetary logos, the Demiurge. Okay, so any one of us that develops and lives within evil, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, cannot just leave this planet because they have developed the technology or because they have created spaceships and they can go to another world and take their McDonald's, drugs, prostitution, and I don't know what else that pollutes and destroys another planet. The gods would not allow this. We live in freedom. If you want to destroy your home, then we're sorry, but we cannot do anything other than send masters, messengers that you kill, you crucify, you poison, etc., etc. But there is free choice, free will through a God that loves us, that tries until the very end to help us awaken. So it can happen just like on our planet that we create chaos. We destroy everything and we live in a terrible state of humanity. But it's us that have created that. Our ego that projects itself, our individualism, egoism, anger, envy, arrogance, and self-importance that creates this type of humanity. That one wants to have power over another, he wants to climb the ladder, etc., etc. So the external is but a reflection of what's inside. This is a basic law of psychology. So it's not a type of evil humanity that exists, but they exist within their own planets. And they cannot leave those planets, just as we cannot leave ours. Because we are Anunnaki, we are evil. We cannot go and cause harm on another planet. planet. So until humanity changes, or some from this humanity free themselves, and at that point you have the free earned right to have freed yourself from the laws of the planet, and then you can travel to other planets. According to his level, other planets, the solar systems, the galaxies, infinites. Just as we can increase this level of consciousness that also allow the universe to expand, what is it useful for? It's useful to get to know other life forms, other humanities, which are marvelous, incredible, that we cannot even imagine. An increase of consciousness, of love, of compassion. For all of that, we need inner development and expansion, even for physical journeys in the universe. And just as we are able to do this, others have done it in the past. And so, yes, we can be visited by aliens, as we like to call them, brothers from outer space. And so people like us that have fused together with the being, disintegrated all of their I or the subconsciousness and personal interest, every intention to do harm or to manipulate, to submit. And so they are free to travel within the universe. They experience things and they are able to increase their consciousness and their knowledge, just like when we go on a trip. It's something that enriches us. And they also visit us to help us, never mind exploiting us. Many of these brothers or extraterrestrials come on this world to study what has happened, why there's so much chaos on this world, just like a scientist that studies organic disorder. It's not to judge it or to condemn it, but first of all is to know, just like the development of a disease, but also to avoid it happening in other parts of the universe, but also to find a remedy or offer us solutions. So they certainly do not want to exploit us. They sometimes want to study, and sometimes they come to help us, to give us a hand. And of course, the contact is not always direct. I don't believe in all these people that say they have been contacted, because all these messages of automatic writing, telepathy, they are messages in the end that are void of any meaning. I mean, yes, they make sense, but they lack the principles of the three factors which I've mentioned in this conference. And these are the three principles of eternal esotericism that truly allow a consciousness to free itself. And when I read these messages of the so-called contacted ones, I don't see any of that. Just like those who say they read messages from the Virgin Mary. They say, love one another, change your lives. Of course, it's all good. But there are no precise principles, and to pray and meditate is not enough. Which is, how do I disintegrate the I? How do I correctly use the sexual energy? What is real compassion for humanity, or the disinterested service, conscious service for humanity? I don't see any of that. And I am summarizing here, but I repeat, these are arts that contain many laws to explain, to understand, and above all, to learn how to practice. So, if there are evil aliens, they are in their own home. They do not come to another world to create it, to create inhabitants of other worlds, robots, machines, or exploited ones. They haven't come and just left us here and suck up everything that we produce. This does not exist. Because as I have said, the universe is created by gods. So there are divine laws that no dark master, Anunnaki, or whatever we want to call them, inhabitants from other planets, evil extraterrestrials, they cannot overstep these. Because light always wins over darkness, even though it may not seem so. So God, that is conscious, and was the devil before, or as to say, unconscious, knows very well all of the arts of the unconscious people, and therefore he can never be overcome or overstepped. Okay, so I think this is all clear now, and I don't want to give specific names because this doesn't interest me, but I do want to end by saying that there are many authors of books online, on YouTube, and I don't want to give any names because they are probably people with good intentions or who are trying to make money. And so this talk is to clarify and so that you're not tricked into following these people. And as I say, some may have good intentions, others not so much. They have just made money through telling these stories. And I have explained the basic principles, so reflect on this. We have always tried to blame something external. First the devil, now the Anunnaki, or evil aliens, but we're never going to resolve the problem this way, because it is inside the human being, it's the unconscious. When I free myself from myself, I free myself from nature and the universe, which is what its purpose was. Okay, so I hope this to be a drop in the ocean of the web, because unfortunately many make a living out of this, many speculate, they sell books, they have made a life for themselves. And this is not our case. We are not interested in any of that. I am only doing this in order for truth to shine through. Then, of course, everyone is free to think whatever they want, but for me, this is the truth. This is light. This is the message, because it's not me that is saying it, because I'm an anthropologist, because I have been studying Hermetic traditions for 32 years. It's for that I am inside, which I'm not at liberty to say here. This is for those who want to know another point of view, to be well informed, and also because I'm part of a current tradition which is called Gnosis, and so it's to clean up Gnosis and put Gnosis in its rightful place, as I don't want somebody to type the word Gnosis on the web and find stuff about Anunnaki, evil aliens, the dualist world, good and evil, all of this stuff that deviates the teaching or transmits a concept of Gnosticism which has nothing to do with contemporary or eternal Gnosticism. Okay, I'm going to end with a couple of quotes from our master, or the founder of contemporary Gnostics. The Demiurge is the force of the Logos that emanates from the Absolute. So, not at all evil or negative. From the Absolute, where all beings are one, a Theomertma Logos emanates, which is a fecunding, generating principle. The force of the Logos, the solar Logos, planetary Logos, which create life into the space of the universe in order to give it consciousness, to stimulate an awakening in each one of us, not to trap us within a prison. We are the ones that create the prison, when in creation, in existence, we don't do anything to unite with the eternal being, and therefore the school that the gods have created becomes a golden cage. But we cannot blame the cage, and we cannot blame the school. If I do not use the school in order to learn, the school is not its fault. So then I reincarnate, life, death. In the end, it becomes a cage. I am imprisoned in matter, but it's not the fault of who's created it. It is you that is not using it in order to free yourself. And that's the purpose with which it was built. Okay, so it does exist in contemporary and classical Gnostic language, as I have mentioned. This evil god, this term exists of evil god and good god. Also the Demiurge, the true or the false Demiurge. So what would the false Demiurge be? These are the fallen angels, and each one of us can be a fallen angel. But it is not their fault that we are trapped within the wheel of samsara, within the karma of the worlds. So each one of us that is a god, a fallen angel, becomes a false demiurge. That's to say, we are part of creation, but do not take advantage of it in order to fuse together with the real demiurge, one's own being, which is a part of the Logos. And there are sacred texts within Gnosis that, under the form of prayer, it is said, for example, I believe in the mystery of the Baphomet and the Demiurge. I believe in the mystery of the Baphomet and the Braxas. The Baphomet used to also be used in the Templar tradition when it existed. What exists today has nothing to do with the true Templars. So the spirit between a god and a creature. So the Demiurge is a creator, is a mediator between the Absolute and the creature, each one of us. They are mediator gods. So the gods that not only create, but they give us the tools, the teaching, the doctrine. They send the masters. So they create a bridge between ourselves and the first principle, the Absolute, our being first, and then the union of all beings. Okay, so we can close with all of this. I am pleased with this message. I'm not sure who it is going to reach, but I feel that I have achieved something that I really felt was necessary, and I hope that this has clarified and has helped you. My idea was to give the title Praise the Demiurge, but since there is this wrong concept of the Demiurge, I thought it could be misunderstood and people would just not listen to it just from the title, because it says to say, praise the evil god, the Anunnaki, and so and so. But now, after the talk, that it has been clarified, I do praise the Demiurge. I praise the Demiurge and I praise the Absolute. So one and the other, not just the Demiurge. I'm not just interested in the Demiurge, but also the gods, the Logos, the Absolute. Praise the Demiurge, praise the Absolute. Thanks everyone, and praise the Demiurge and praise the Absolute.